Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Denise Ivanovec. I'm the Director of Contracts and Grants over here at OEWD, and I want to welcome you to today's call. We have our welcome screen up here, and that is asking for you all to please, as you're logging in today, if you could please locate the Skype chat box and go ahead and type in your name and organization. That way we'll have a log of everyone as you're dialing in. So before we get started, just wanted to give you a brief outline of today's webinar. We're going to have an introduction to TGS, and that'll be presented by Jenny Collins. We will also have a live demo of TGS, and that will be presented by Marissa Bloom. And then in addition to that, we're hoping for a substantial amount of time for Q&A, and we will be doing that via Skype chat. So you'll be using the tool you're using right now to pose your questions to us. Towards the end of the call, we will be reading out those questions and providing answers. If we're not able to get to all of them, we will be getting back to you all and posting answers to all of the questions that you do have. So at this time, I'm hoping you will be able to increase your audio volume so that you can comfortably hear us. Given the number of people, we will have just the presenters doing the audio portion, and so we'll communicate with you all via the Skype chat. Also, please hold your questions on the content of the presentation until the Q&A portion of the webinar, and we'll answer questions at that point. But if you do have any technical computer questions, the setup is not working for you, you can go ahead and type those into the Skype chat, and we have Will Alderman who will be responding to some of those technical questions if you have any during the Q&A or at this point. So finally, for the Q&A, you'll be typing questions via the chat box, and the presenters will be reading those questions and answering verbally. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny Collins for the rest of this portion of the call. Thank you.
Okay, hello everybody. This is so cool to see everyone signing in, and I see a lot of familiar names. So I'm Jenny Collins, one of the grant coordinators for our economic development projects, and yeah, just thrilled that we're all here together today. Here on the screen, you'll see a brief webinar outline of what we're doing today and what we're going to be covering. We have a lot to talk through, so I'm going to try to move pretty quickly so that we can really focus our time on the demo. As Denise mentioned earlier, if you're not able to stay on for the whole webinar today, that's okay. We are recording already, and we will post the recording as well as this PowerPoint and other training resources for you. We were going to end with thank yous, but we actually wanted to start with thank yous and set the tone. We really appreciate everyone's taking the time out to be on the webinar today. I know there's so much going on. It's a busy time of year. And we also wanted to emphasize our understanding and our belief that the work that you do is critical to keep San Francisco economically healthy and thriving. And this is a challenging time here in the city, and the work that you do is really important. So we want to be supporting you in doing that work. Our particular role as your grant coordinators is to set up your grants and contracts and to process your invoice payments as efficiently as possible. We want to acknowledge that this has been a difficult year of transition with the city's new finance system coming in. So our hope is that this new transition to the TGS system will really help us be more efficient and make the invoicing process even easier for you so that you can focus on the work you do and not so much on tracking down your invoices and payments. So we really appreciate everything that you are doing. Keep it up. Okay, so what is TGS? TGS is one of several online invoicing platforms that we currently use here at OEWD. It is a web-enabled grants management software application, and it will allow you to track and manage your project budget, invoice status, and project balances. We're already using TGS with our workforce development portfolio projects. So I know some of you on the call today are current workforce providers. You may be using the GMS system, but some of you may also be using the TGS system. So just to be clear, TGS will replace the current invoicing process for our econ providers. You are used to submitting your invoice via email to the oewd.ap email mailbox. We won't be using that anymore for invoice submission. And as mentioned earlier, we are primarily focusing on our economic development projects today, although we have also invited workforce providers to join the call if they're interested in learning more about the TGS system. Before we go too much further, we wanted to make sure you're clear on whether you need to be on this call or not. So just to review who is included in the transition, who is moving over to TGS are our current active OEWD economic development projects, both grants and contracts. You'll see on the screen the list of folks who are not transitioning over, which includes contractors for the Small Business Development Center under Angel Cardoz. We also have econ projects which have CDBG funding and invoice through the GMS system with Holly Lung and Patty Medina. Those will continue to do so. If you have workforce projects, which currently bill through TGS or GMS, they will continue doing that. There's no change there. And if you have an economic development project which expired on June 30th and is not being extended, then we will not be building your project in the TGS system, and you don't really need to be on the webinar today. If you have questions and you're still not sure for your particular projects, please reach out to me. You'll see my contact info listed there, or my colleague Byron Lamb, who supports the other econ projects. You can reach out to us and we can help you sort that out. So why are we making this transition? Well, here are some of the benefits of using TGS for invoicing. The big benefit is it will be centralized invoicing. And so you as the agency, the program manager, and the grant coordinator will be able to view the invoice live time once you have submitted it. This is going to increase our efficiency by eliminating email submission to accounts payable. As soon as you submit your invoice, it'll become immediately available to your grant coordinator, as opposed to having to wait a week to 2 weeks for AP to process the invoice. You will also have the ability to view invoices and supporting documentation submitted for previous months. You'll have detailed invoice information with remaining balances. You'll be able to manage and update your own contact information. And the system also offers better reporting features. We're not really going to spend any time on that today. That's something we can do down the road, but it is a possibility in the new system. In terms of our current status, right now, all of the fiscal year 17-18 invoices should have been submitted already. We actually have a few more that we're tracking down, and I sent out some emails today, and Byron will be emailing more next week. But all of that should be in. We are in the process of building projects in TGS. Thank you so much to everyone who's already ahead of the curve and emailing us to ask for your user ID or your project number. We are not quite there yet. We're in the process of building the projects and setting up all the users. And as we get them ready, we will be issuing that information next week so that you are able to get your invoices in by July 10th. One important thing for you to know, if you have an older project that has gone back for some period of time, we will be inputting all of your previous invoicing rolled up into one cumulative total, which will be reflected in the month of June 2018. That way, when you get into your project, you'll be able to see the accurate and actual existing balance and remaining balance of funds. We are not going to be uploading any supporting documentation for the charges. We'll just keep those on file. So we will be expecting that you should be able to upload your July invoice to the TGS system by August 10th. And moving forward, we hope to stay on that monthly flow where the 10th of each month you'll be submitting your invoice for the prior month's charges. Please wait until we have notified you that your project is built before trying to submit your July invoice. we will be letting everyone know. Once your project is built in TGS and we notify you of your user ID and password, you will start by updating your contact information and then submitting your invoice. This is a flowchart showing how the invoice flows with the reminder that for those of you who have deliverable-based budgets, that will continue as it does now, where your first step will be to email your completed deliverable to your project manager for approval. Once they have responded approving your deliverable, you will use their approval email to upload into the TGS system. So you will not be submitting the actual deliverable, whether it be a report or pictures. You don't need to upload that into TGS, only the approval email from the PM. Once you have, and then you'll upload the rest of your invoice information and submit. The grant coordinator will review and approve, the program manager will review and approve, and then the senior manager will give final approval, at which point we will pass the information on to the finance team who will process payment. This is why the process does generally take 30 days. And if at any point we need to kick your invoice back for questions, and if we need you to resubmit, then the 30-day payment clock will start over based on the date that you resubmit. All right, so how to access TGS. Here you will see the actual link to get into the system. We want to have you pay special care with this because TGS is used in other jurisdictions and has other instances which do appear identical to our login page but have a slightly different address. Your user ID and password will not work in those other instances. So I would suggest bookmarking this address or flagging this somewhere so you can get into the system. So in terms of user information, we have been creating a number of your agencies in TGS, and we will provide you with your initial user ID and password. For login help, the login page itself provides user ID and password help options. TGS offers several user roles, including, the first is the most important, the org admin level. Org admin level has all invoice submission and role assignment permissions. Every agency needs to have at least one primary org admin, and we would suggest having one backup if you have enough staff for that. That's really the only level you need to have. For a larger organization, you might want to assign some people a read-only, view-only level. Perhaps you have a board of directors or some other members of your team who might want to be able to view the invoice information but not be able to enter information or submit. A third possible level is financial data entry, in which you could assign a user who can enter the financial data but not officially submit the invoice. This is a good option for fiscal sponsor relationships, where the fiscal sponsor is probably going to be the org admin who will be officially submitting, but you might want to assign the financial data entry role to your sub so that they can enter the invoice information, and then the fiscal sponsor, can review and submit. If you have a larger organization, you might want multiple users. If you're smaller or an individual contractor, you only need that one org admin level. So once we share your user ID and passwords with you, it would be a good idea to log in and check that they work, and then add and edit your user roles as necessary. Again, you're not going to be able to do that yet until we send that to you, and we also want to finish doing the project build. We're still trying to get into your projects ourselves in order to complete the invoicing, but we will be letting everyone know individually once we're ready for you to take that next step. In terms of agency information, your agency may have already existed in TGS from a prior workforce development project or an RFP submission from some years ago. We created many agencies for this transition, entering just the very basic information to set up the profile. So, and just a note again for fiscal sponsors that they'll be the ones completing the agency information for themselves, reflective of their own agency, not for any agencies that you sponsor. An important note, we are not using the system at this time to collect insurance, board of directors information, audit documents, etc. You'll need to trick the system in order to get it to accept your edits when you're going in, which I'm going to show you momentarily. So the next steps for you, again, you can't do this yet, but once we get the projects active for you, we're going to ask that you go in to review and edit your agency information as necessary. And we have a list here of the 3 tabs included in the agency information portion, and I'm going to show you right now what that looks like. Okay, so I'm going into one of our actual projects here. Okay, so, all right. When you get into Total Grant Solutions, you will, I'm trying to keep this open so I can still see it. So you'll go to the switcher and you will select Agency Information and hit Go. Okay. So there are 3 tabs. Okay. So there are 3 tabs here. For the agency information screen, you will be checking to make sure everything is spelled correctly. If you want to enter in your federal tax ID, you can do so. Make sure your address is correct. You'll see all the fields that have an asterisk. You'll want to make sure all of them are correct. As you can see right now, I am using my email address in here because we don't want to, we're trying to protect you from being bombarded with system emails every time we're adjusting something. But ultimately, we'll go in and correct that for you. But if you notice anything that's not right, please correct that. Okay, on the General tab, this is information which we do not need to receive from you. However, the system will not let you save any of your edits until you enter something in these fields. So this is an example. You just need to enter some kind of number or digit here. You can put anything you want because, again, we're not using this as an official record. And here in the text fields, you'll just be entering a period. You don't need to upload any information. Here you'll enter a period. And this is section here for agency users is where you will enter in who your users are and assign them a user level. You'll want to make sure that their email addresses are correct. Under officers, the system will also require you to enter in the names of your officers, but we are not interested in collecting that information, so you will have to go in and select none. Again, that's up to you. If you wanted to enter in the information, you're welcome to, but you don't have to. So you can just enter none there. And the last tab, financial, for organizational funding. Again, we're not concerned about that, so you don't need to upload anything here. For insurance, as you know, we do require insurance, but we are not using this system to collect that documentation. Again, for those of you who have workforce projects, you actually are uploading your insurance information here. Anyone is welcome to upload your insurance information if you would like to. But otherwise, we are not requiring that, so you can go ahead and check not applicable for your coverage amounts, and then you'll be able to save all these fields. Okay, and with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Marissa Bloom, who will be demonstrating how to submit invoices.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today. We're super excited to be able to transition so many of you into this system, which, as Jenny shared, the Workforce Development Division has been using for some time now for many of their projects. But it's new to a lot of you, and so we want to make sure you're supported in the transition process. That said, I'm going to actually demonstrate exactly what it looks like to submit an invoice through TGS. So you're first going to log in, as Jenny already showed you, on that main totalgrantsolution.org/TGSEWD/master logon. That page will take you to your login screen. You will log in with your credentials, and once you get into the system, you will have the option. It's going to take you to a home screen, and it looks like the one in the slide in front of you. But I'm actually dragging over now the actual portal, the TGS portal, so that you can see I'm logged in as a kind of test user. Where we go to actually submit invoices. So you're going to come up here to the top of the screen. There is a drop-down menu that currently reads Select. You're going to drop down to the option called 7C squared, 7C2. Now, 7C squared is named what it is because this system was actually developed here in San Francisco, which for those of us from here or those of us working here, we probably know that it's a 7 by 7 square miles size. And so that is where 7C squared, the name 7C squared came from. So we're going to click on to 7C squared, and you're going to click on the little box that says Go. And that will advance you to the invoicing screen. Now that you're in, I am logged in as, like I said, exec user, a dummy project, but your agency name will appear up here, or your username will appear up here, and right under your username, you will see your agency name. So for fiscal sponsors, again, that's going to relate to whoever the fiscal sponsor is, and then the project that you have in your drop-down menu here are going to dictate which project you're billing against. So again, this is very important for a fiscal sponsor to pay attention to, because if you are fiscally sponsoring multiple projects or multiple agencies, you're going to want to select the correct project here. And similarly, for those of you that have multiple projects with our department, you'll need to ensure that you are billing against the correct project. So in selecting that project, the projects that we've set up for you guys for this transition will generally be the same in terms of how they are named. You're going to see the name of the program or project first, followed by the procurement basis, meaning either the RFP or the RFQ that authorized that grant or contract agreement, and then the end date of that project so that you can see when the current term end is. So this project, for purposes of demonstration, is called the Civic Center Super Fun Festival. It was procured under RFP 208, and it ends December 2018. You'll see that the system also auto-generates a contract number associated with your project. So that's a 4-digit number. In this case, it's 1619. Again, if you have multiple projects with us, or you're a fiscal sponsor with multiple agencies, you'll want to carefully track which projects contract number is associated with which agency and which program. So keep your own records on that. And also note that if you ever do a budget modification, or if you create a new grant agreement or amendment, generally we are building a new project in the system with a different contract number. So make sure that you're aware that the contract number, the contract ID that is generated by the system is going to be, it's going to change with every budget modification, with every amendment. So just be aware of that as well. Generally, our grant coordinators, our GCs, are going to deactivate or you won't be able to see past projects or expired projects in the system. So if you had a budget modification and then you received a new contract ID, that old project generally is not going to appear here if it has already expired or been basically closed out by your grant coordinator. So you shouldn't have too much confusion there. All right, so now we've selected the project, our Super Fun Festival under RFP 208. Just one other note. Again, with modifications or amendments, you may also see other words in the title of your project, like mod or amend. That would be referring to the most recent budget modification or amendment to your grant or contract. Okay, so one just broad strokes note for all of you, particularly those of you that are new to your agencies or new to city funding, is that OEWD grants are considered cost reimbursement for the most part, meaning that expenses are generally incurred and paid by our grantees and contractors prior to seeking reimbursement. As such, your invoices, as Jenny shared, are due 10 days following the closure of the prior month. So for your July invoice, you're going to be invoicing August 10th for all expenses incurred and paid within the month of July. Variances from this general rule and billing schedule would be found in your grant agreement and negotiated individually with your program manager and or grant coordinator. So for example, if you have issues around when your books close and you need 5 additional days to submit your invoices, those kinds of things need to generally be negotiated and made clear to your grant coordinator so that we don't start aggressively following up with you after we don't see an invoice on the 10th. So just make sure there's very, very clear direction and understanding between your financial staff and your grant coordinator and your project or program manager so that it's clear when billing is supposed to happen and for what purpose. For example, if you've got a deliverable-based agreement, you may not plan to be invoicing until 6 months into the contract term based on when those deliverables are expected to be done. So that should be clearly delineated in your grant agreement or your contract, and something that your grant coordinator knows and can advise you on as well if you have any questions. But again, always go back to your source document, your grant agreement, your contract agreement, and ensure that you know when you're supposed to bill and how. All right, and again, contact your grant coordinator. Generally, it's going to be Jenny or Byron for any questions related to that, okay? In every case, though, expenses must be billed back to your OEWD grant within the fiscal year, meaning between the term of July 1 through June 30th. So again, as Jenny shared, a quick reminder to connect with your grant coordinator if you've not yet submitted a final bill for costs incurred in fiscal year 17-18, because we are really trying to close that year out. So now we're in 7C squared. You're first going to select in the contract calendar down here a month. So for most of you, you're going to have the first month that you see is going to be June 2018, because as Jenny shared, all of your prior costs that you've incurred and been paid for within that project will be entered against June 2018, and your project should reflect the remaining available budget by line and by fund source if applicable. So if you notice that your budget does not match what you have in your own records, for example, if there's a discrepancy on the balance of any line item, of the total contract budget, or of the total contract that you have in your records, then you need to contact your grant coordinator right away so we can make adjustments to your project before you start billing. We want to make sure we are on the same page in terms of the most recent budget modifications and things like that. You will select an activity, so we're going to start with July 2018 for this particular invoice. You're going to first select an activity, and again, for most of you, you've only got one fund source, so you're only going to have one set of activities that you can select. You're also then going to have the option of selecting a fund, and like I said, for most of you, you're only going to have one fund source, so you'll only have one option. If there are workforce development agreements, grantees on the phone right now that are new to your agency and have never used TGS, and you have multiple fund streams, federal dollars, things like that, connect with your grant coordinator, either myself or Will, to get instructions on how to bill out to their respective sources and what the kind of allowable costs are within your federal requirements. I just want to put that commercial out there, whereas most of the economic development grantees are going to be general fund and have a sole source that they can choose from. So one set of activities, one fund. All right, so once you select both of those options, your remaining budget is going to appear at the bottom of the screen here. It's going to give you each line item for which you have balances, and this will give you the ability to claim reimbursement against each of those line items in balance. Okay, so we're going to go ahead starting with entering salaries for this project, and just note that there are two line items for which you will have to do an additional step before you just enter cost into the amount requested field. And those line items are salaries and fringe benefits. For salaries, you're going to click on the little icon to the left of the program expenses column that looks like a magnifying glass with a little V in it. If you click on that, it will actually expand your salary calculations screen, which is where you'll enter salaries for individual staff at your agency. So as you can see, we've got one staff person currently assigned to this project, Big Bird. He's the street captain. He is billing at, he's a full FTE in this project. So what we're going to do for Big Bird is enter his salary. For purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to say that we've already calculated off system what his exact salary costs were for the month of July 2018, and we're going to enter a direct salary amount for Big Bird of $1,000. So in the salary direct field, you're going to enter I've got number lock on, 1 second, $1,000 here, and then you're going to want to make sure that matches what's in the actual payment column if you want to claim a flat amount. So we're going to put in 1,000 here. Now, I'll show you quickly as well how to do this exact thing for if you want to be billing by basically for your hourly employees. In that case, you would enter the number of hours worked and their rate that they're being billed to the project, and it will generate for you. So give me just a second. I'll do this version first. Okay, so I'm going to update that Big Bird has billed exactly $1,000 within the month of July, and I'm going to update there. And then you'll see you have the option as well as of adding additional team members to the project. Now, generally for your economic development grants and contracts, we negotiate your budgets at the very start of the grant agreement, and we generally have specific staff assigned to that project, but things change at agencies all the time. So if you've got a change in somebody's name or title or anything, you can edit folks that are already built into the project just by clicking edit. So that same way that I entered Big Bird's salary direct, I also can change if Big Bird got married or changed his name or changed his title. We can make those edits here. But if you're adding staff to the project or removing staff from the project, you also do want to be in contact with your grant coordinator in case, and your project manager in case there are changes to the budget that need to happen. We do need to renegotiate often what that budget looks like based on the staffing structure and things like that. So just keep us apprised of things that change at the agency, staff transitions, things like that, so we can ensure that the staffing to that project is appropriate and approved before you start billing folks to the project. But as you can see, like I said, you can submit additional staff here. So we're going to let Oscar Grouch perform some work on this project as well. So I'm putting in last name Grouch, first name Oscar, and I'm going to add that team member. That will open up an additional line item for me, and Oscar is going to be my finance manager. And Oscar is paid at a rate of, we'll say, $25 an hour. He's making the big bucks. And he's working 10 hours a week. So when I update Oscar, the actual payment I should also have calculated off system. So for the month of July, we'll say that he made a total of 1,000. Sorry, this should work just fine. And if it doesn't, I'm sorry. Oh, works. Okay, so you're going to want to enter the exact rate of pay as well as the number of hours worked for the total month. Sorry, that was the thing I had done wrong. And you're going to want to make sure that the salary direct, or the actual payment column, matches up to whatever that calculation is. Otherwise, you will get an error. So as we see, Oscar worked for $25 an hour for 10 hours. So we did the calculation of what the actual payment should be. Now you see that both of those rolled up down here under the total expenditure field, and you see that you're totally billing $1,250 to the July invoice for salaries. Now you're going to click here on the little back button to take you back to your main budget screen, and that will show you that the amount requested for salaries has appropriately been reflected. You'll then move on to your fringe calculations. So I'm going to do the same thing for fringe. I'm going to click on that little magnifying glass with the V. And I'm going to do, for these, for purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to just be entering fringe against the FICA line. But again, you can do fringe for any categories that are approved in your budget. And the other category is where you would roll up anything that's not reflected under the above fringe options. So for purposes, again, of this demonstration, I'm just entering fringe against the FICA line. There are as well 2 different ways you can calculate your fringe for your project. So one way is that if you leverage some of your fringe costs with some outside grants or other resources, and you want to bill a very specific amount of fringe for your total month, then what you can do is enter directly into the rate. You'll enter the rate as 100%, and you'll enter in the payroll total column the amount of fringe that you want to bill to this month, right? So let's say for purposes of this grant, we had $300 in exact fringe costs, and you're gonna, again, it should match here in the actual expenditure column. That 300 should also populate here. And if you click update, $300 is gonna be your total expenditure for fringe for FICA for that month. However, if you wanted to actually have the system calculate that for you, you're going to want to put your payroll total amount in here. So we said our payroll total was $1,250 for our 2 staff. And the rate of fringe for FICA for that month, we'll say, is 8%. And we're going to update here, and it's going to actually calculate the amount of fringe that should be allocable to the staff that you have billed to that month, okay? And you can do that same thing for every single fringe line item with the appropriate rate of that fringe expenditure. So again, you can have the system do that for you, or you can do it yourself and enter it directly. But we would recommend that you kind of make sure that your total fringe support that you've got for that month supports the exact fringe calculations that are in the system. If there are variances, if there are even pennies off, you're going to want to adjust the rate of percentage so that it accurately reflects what you're billing back. Because again, when the city comes out to do audits, we want to make sure you have appropriate supporting documentation on file for all costs that have been billed to the city within a given month. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the last couple steps. So Now you see that I've entered my salaries, I've entered my fringe. You may have a combination of things in your budget. Many of you may have a deliverable budget. I want to note something very important about the deliverable budgets, which is that with a deliverable budget, your budget in your grant agreement may read, deliverable 1.5, deliverable, 1.3, and it'll have an associated name with that deliverable. So it might be deliverable 1.1, initial report. But the system is only going to tell you the deliverables in sequence 1 through 5 that you have in your grant. So we won't be able to tell you in the system currently what that is associated with. There will be an associated budget amount listed here in the balance column, which should help you match it up. Again, go back to your grant coordinator if you have any questions around which deliverable you need to be billing on within a given month. But the system, if you've already billed down, as you can see with the deliverable 1 here, there's a zero balance, meaning that I've already billed against deliverable 1. So the system's not going to let me bill against it again. You will then need to make sure that you haven't, if you're getting an error from the system, it generally means that you've already billed against that line item. So check in again with your grant coordinator if you're having any issues. So I'm going to say that all I had in the month of July was salary and fringe costs. This is not the final invoice. I'm going to show you the very next step, which is you're going to save data on that screen, which kind of locks in what you've entered. And then you're going to click on this number 2 at the very bottom, the cost report, which is going to take you to a screen that shows you what you've billed for each line across sources. So again, this is important if you have multiple fund sources. It will pull what you've entered in each screen and calculate one total for your actual expenditures. And on this screen is where you upload supporting documentation to support your charges. Now you're going to want to upload proof of paid invoices and other documentation, for example, with salaries, a payroll register, something to confirm that the costs that you're entering were incurred and paid within that month. So for purposes of demonstration, I'm going to upload a file. If I click on upload, it gives me another window. I'm going to choose a file from my desktop, and it's going to be the one called Salary Support, our template, and I'll click on the button called Upload Invoice. It will tell you that your document has been successfully uploaded. If you do not see this note, that tells us that something went wrong with the upload. Generally what that means is either the file is named something that the system doesn't understand, or that you're not trying to upload the only approved format for supporting documentation in TGS, which is a PDF. Make sure before you get started on invoices that any supporting documentation has been scanned, saved as PDF, and available for upload so that you can make invoicing as quick and easy as possible. So I've uploaded salary support. I can actually review here by clicking on the review field exactly what document got uploaded, so I can make sure that what I've uploaded is what I intended. Okay, so I'm going to close here to just show that I've uploaded one document against this line item. Now every single line item that you have included expenses for here should be supported by an uploaded document with 2 exceptions. One is the fringe line. We do not need fringe calculation support. And the other is if you have an indirect rate, we do not need you to upload support for your indirect calculations because those things are generally negotiated at the beginning of your grant agreement, so we generally know what's included in those roll-up costs. But I've done everything I need to do for this invoice. I've uploaded my supporting documentation for this, and I'm good to go. Now, if you are not logged in as an organizational administrator, you will not see the option to submit here. Only org admins are going to be able to submit the invoice officially for payment. So if you don't see that button, it means that you're not logged in as an org admin, and you need to make sure to contact your org admin to have them submit the invoice on your behalf or provide you with the appropriate credentials to be able to submit an invoice. So I'm going to click submit here, and it's going to take me, well, it's going to generate my report that actually that includes all the costs that I have submitted for that month. So you'll see this report is the roll-up of the $1,350 that you've billed for both salaries and fringe, and it gives you the breakdown by the staff. If you scroll down, it'll show you the salary detail on what the actual expenditures were by staff. So this is the report that our grant coordinators get and review against your supporting documentation. And move things forward. So now you've submitted your first invoice successfully. Awesome. And now what I'm going to just quickly show you is where you can find that same the information on where things are in your invoice. So you're going to go back to, for purposes of this, I'm just going to go back to home. and it's going to show that the July 2018 invoice has been submitted. You're going to see a little yellow button, meaning that it is pending and your grant coordinator has not yet reviewed and approved or rejected it for you. Now, if I could just quickly show you, if I were to drop down to June, I've already submitted a June invoice. Well, okay, that didn't work. Well, we're going to go ahead and just show you what it looks like in Report Builder to pull up that invoice and supporting documentation yourself very quickly. If you click on Report Builder in this drop-down menu, it'll take you to our reporting functions in the system. And I'm going to show you that you can actually go to your agency docs and find that document that I just uploaded. Your agency, anything that you've uploaded for your projects since the history of working with TGS will be here by invoice, by contract, by requested month, by budget item. And you'll see down here at the very bottom that for contract 1619, the salary report that I just uploaded is right here. So I can always go back to that if I'm ever curious about what I use to support any of my charges. You can also, under canned reports, quickly choose that monthly program cost report for that appropriate project, which was a Civic Center Super Fun Festival. Choose the month that we billed, which is July 2018. Click on a date within that month, and then click on the arrow, and it will generate that same report for you. So you have access to your submitted invoices. It gives you the timestamp of when you submitted it and whether or not it has been approved by your grant coordinator. Okay, so that's very basically how you submit an invoice, start to finish, how to check your submissions, where to find supporting documentation that you've already submitted. If you have no charges for a given month, as Jenny said earlier, it is best practice to submit a zero invoice for that month. While it's not required, this will let us know that we don't need to expect an invoice for you, which is especially important at year end when we're trying to confirm final charges at the end of a fiscal year. And again, if you have any questions at all about how to work through those steps in submitting an invoice, you just get in touch with your grant coordinator. And generally, that's going to be shown right here in 7C squared. The name and contact number for your grant coordinator will pop up here. So that's generally, again, going to either be Jenny or Byron, or in the case of workforce grantees, myself or Will Alderman. That's all today. I'm going to pass this back over to Jenny.
Okay, just another reminder for anyone who's on the call and has not had a chance to do so yet. We would appreciate it if you can please use the chat button located in the lower bottom left corner of your screen to sign in with your name and your agency so that we know you're here and we can track who's attending. All right, so just a few items left to talk through before we turn it over to you for questions and answers. So tips for expediting invoice approval. So just a general reminder that charges incurred within a particular month and deliverables approved within a particular month should be invoiced by the 10th of the following month. And like Marissa just said, the city does set a strict fiscal year-end cutoff. So charges incurred between July 1st and June 30th of a given year must be submitted by July 10th, regardless of whether the project term extends beyond that time. I know that's been confusing because a lot of our econ projects span over multiple years. But still, if charges were incurred, you have salary or cost reimbursement charges or deliverables were completed and approved within a particular fiscal year, they have to be invoiced for during that fiscal year or no later than July 10th. So if you have any catch up to do, please contact us today, I would say. So once again, deliverable line items, you'll continue doing as you do now by submitting your deliverable directly to your PM for approval via email. Once approved, you'll upload your PM approval document into TGS. No need to include the actual deliverable. Like Marissa said, please make sure to use the correct deliverable number and invoice for the full amount. In terms of cost reimbursement line items, you'll be attaching all necessary supporting documentation, and the system won't allow you to exceed the line item available balance. In terms of supporting documentation that you're uploading, please note the system only accepts PDF files, and you can't use any special characters in the file name as listed here. If you are ready to submit multiple months of invoice at the same time, it's important to start by entering the oldest month first and then work sequentially to the most recent month. The system gets all freaked out if you try to do it in reverse. Marissa mentioned zero invoicing. Some of our training materials say that this is mandatory. For right now, we are not insisting on this. We do appreciate if you would like to submit a monthly zero invoice for a month that you don't have any invoice charges for. That does help us keep our records clear. In terms of budget modifications, if you are realizing that something in your budget needs to be changed, please contact your grant coordinator. We generally allow 2 budget modifications per fiscal year. We generally don't do that until after the first quarter, so we would open up that possibility in October, and then the final budget modifications for the year occurs in May. And again, that applies even for projects which span over the fiscal year. Okay, so next steps and other resources. For right now, the ball is still in our court as we work to complete building all the projects and entering in all the invoicing. We will be letting you know on an individual basis once we have your agency information set up and everything ready to go. At that point, we'll ask you to go in and check out your agency information, make sure it's updated, enter in your user information, editing and adding user roles as necessary. We'll ask you to check your projects for accuracy and let us know right away about any discrepancies, and then be submitting your July invoices by August 10th and each following month by the 10th. Here are the other resources we have available for technical assistance. We've already shared links to the training videos. Here you can see the website that you can locate these at in case you have turnover or would like to watch them again and again. Also, we will be providing email and telephone technical assistance. That's me or Byron. And we are offering next Monday and Tuesday a few in-person computer lab opportunities. They're half-hour time slots. These are not mandatory. This is just for folks who would be more comfortable coming in to have a live hands-on practice. So if you're interested in that opportunity, please do email Denise, and we're asking that people do RSVP no later than noon on Monday so that we know if we should be expecting you. And it brings us to the end of our formal presentation. So in terms of question and answers that you may have right now, we would appreciate if you have questions specific to your project, let's talk about that offline. You can reach out to me or Byron directly. But if you do have questions that might be beneficial for everyone's knowledge related to what we're discussing today, please go ahead and type your question into the chat box, and we will read your question and respond right now. So you can go ahead and start typing if anyone has a question. And once again, we will be posting this recording and sharing that information too, as well as the questions and the answers. Okay, so we have a question from Joe. On the consulting line items, can we upload one PDF for all consultant backup for the month? Or do we have to attach one PDF for consultant line item? Hold on one second, Joe. I'm going to try to pull up our window again here. And oh yeah, here we are. Okay. So, do you want to?
Sure.
Let's see. Go back. Oh well, I guess yeah. The Fun Festival. We're going to go back to the Fun Festival here. Go back to the expense info just so we can have something in front of us. Selecting all funded activities. Selecting general fund. Okay. So here in this example, we have one consultant line. Now, you might, in certain situations, we have multiple consultant lines. So obviously, you're going to be uploading the appropriate consulting backup under the appropriate consultant line. Like Marissa mentioned about deliverables, unfortunately, we are only able to identify them as consultant 1, consultant 2, etc. You'll know in your budget who falls under which line. So really, Joe, the answer to your question is you can do it either way. It's fine to upload all the backup for that 1 month in one combined PDF. That is fine. Or you may have separate documents for a different week, or maybe you have the invoice and your check showing that you paid it. It's okay for those to be combined or separate documents. However, if you have multiple consultants in your budget, you will be attaching separate PDFs for each consultant line. So your consultant 1 would need their backup attached there, and your consultant 2 would need their backup attached there. Joe, hopefully I'm answering your question. You can feel free to chat back if you'd like more detail, or again, we can follow up offline. Okay, Lorraine is asking, when can we expect the login info and other details? Well, Lorraine, we are getting on that as quickly as possible. So yes, we have over 100 projects to build. So our intention is to get everything built and out by the 10th so that you can invoice. Unfortunately, we're still tracking down some folks' 1718 invoices, and we can't complete the project builds until we have that. So we're going to start going one by one. And again, we aim to have everything out by the 10th. Unfortunately, that doesn't give you a lot of lead time to practice or anything, but as we get them built, we'll be letting you know. So I wouldn't expect anything today, but starting next week, we should be sending out those communications. And don't worry, we will be reaching out to you. You can, of course, reach out if you have questions, but not to worry. We do have a very complete list of who we need to send them to. So by the middle of next week, you should expect that information, certainly by the 10th. Okay, Pam is asking for zero invoicing. What documentation do we upload? There's no supporting documentation to upload. Basically, you would be following Marissa's instructions and entering zeros for all the categories that you have in your budget, and then pressing submit. That's all you need to do because there's no backup. When you press submit, you'll see the cost report that shows zeros, and that will be clear to you, to your project manager, to us, that it's your indication that you don't have any charges to invoice for that period. Once again, that's not required, but it is a best practice, and for those who have the capacity to do that, that would be great. Okay, any additional questions at this time? Well, I'm not seeing anything coming in, so I think we will wrap up for now. Again, if you think of something later, feel free to reach out. We know it's sort of difficult since you can't log in yet and you can't see your project. It's a little tricky to see, but once you get started and you're ready to be submitting your invoices, feel free to reach out to Byron or myself so that we can walk you through it. And yeah, but I think that's it for today. Again, our gratitude to everyone for going through yet another system change. We know it's a lot to add on top of everything else you have going on, but our hope is that this really will be a system improvement for us. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and I think we will bring it to a close. All right, take care.